Welcome back to another episode of Dental Marketing Go. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help offices just like yours level the playing field against the big guys out there so you can get the new patients you deserve, so you can grow the way that you want. And today is a special episode. Dental Marketing Go has turned 1 year old, and we have all the best episodes with the best parts, the parts that everybody liked the most. You're going to be seeing those today from our best guest, our best performing shows, so stay tuned.
On the marketing front, it's really different. It depends on the side of business we're talking about. For me, something that's new at Peak is we have implant centers. And they're a pain point, right? I'm used to bread and butter dentistry. It's like buying a Honda and then trying to sell a Ferrari. So it's been a bit of a challenge for me, but I've had to get creative. And you and I have talked about this. I'm pretty outside the box. We've had to make some moves to Bing because some of our offices are in rural offices. We even ran dating ads on Match.com for veneers.
That's so
we did some Bumble ads for Invisalign, and those have been done really well. We're doing an influencer campaign through our radio, our morning station right now. And that's been going great. We gave him Invisalign, and he's talking about the process and the doctor. I'm just all about, I think every office is different. Not all dental offices are created the same. And we treat them, we group them in different ways. And this might be helpful for somebody new starting out. So my budgets are based off the age of the practice. So if it's a de novo practice, it's going to have a higher budget. If it's a specialty practice, it's going to have a higher budget. An implant budget is much higher than most specialty. Yeah. And then general dentistry, it goes de novo, young de novo, teenager, mature, and then that's it.
Ooh, I really like that. So how I've always thought through it was patient referral ratio, right? So if you open a de novo, let's talk about like a GP office. If you open a de novo and day one, you're going to have zero patient referrals, right? Month one, you're going to have zero or very few patient referrals. Maybe you have one or two, right? Month two, you're going to have a couple. You might have a handful of patient referrals if you're doing a good job. Month three, you might have maybe 10. Month four, right? And you start building that up around month six, as the patients start to come back for their hygiene checkups and things like that. That's where the referrals really begin to pick up. Hey, sorry to interrupt the show, but I want to make sure that you're going to Dicoma 2024. It's July 10th through the 12th. And guess what? We are going to be speaking on the main stage, and we're going to be hosting a boot camp as well. And we want to give away some free tickets. So how do you win these free tickets? You go to smcnational.com, click the little bar that says enter to win free tickets to Dicoma, and then you submit your information, and everybody's a winner. We're going to be giving a discount to everybody who enters, and we're going to be giving away some free tickets to the conference itself and to the boot camp. Make sure you sign up for these right away. Back to the show. And so you have to start with a much larger marketing budget, and then you start to shrink that as the patient referral new patients start to kick in. But I love the way you broke it down. You broke it down in stages, and you had
a little bit of both. If you build it, they will come. There was not a pediatric dentist who accepted. The majority of my patients have state-funded insurance. So as I mentioned, with the National Health Service Corps Scholarship commitment, that literally was not only a means to help pay for dental school, but also was a way for me to not have to worry about those financial commitments or those burdens to pay for my education, to allow me to still be able to treat this population in private practice. So I had my marketing consultant, who's also my sister. She was doing some phone calls, kind of cold calling some offices around the area and posing as if she was a mother moving to the area and would have state-funded insurance, to then get an idea of who around town had this insurance, so that I wasn't potentially running into any roadblocks with establishing and having this duplicity of services so nearby to one another. So it really just turned out that in the building where we are located is 5 minutes from the home that we grew up in, and is definitely a staple in the Euclid community, very well-known building, and one of the few providers in, let's say, a 10-mile radius that actually accepts the gamut of state-funded insurances, and recognizing that there is a need. I remember growing up, and when we moved into our home in Euclid, we were actually the first Black family to move into the neighborhood. And that was almost four decades ago. And and now we're at a point where pretty much even the school system is majority African American. And so there's definitely a need, and there's a position that I chose to place myself in to really try to create the greatest impact that I can with this passion of serving these children who have this significant need.
So how long did it take to ramp up to where you're at now? Like, did it take a month? Did it take 6 months? Did it take from a new patient standpoint?
Sure. I did have patients on day one, which, this was a scratch startup. So I was quite a blessing. Luckily, there's so many folks. I'm the middle child, and my siblings we're all products of Euclid City Schools. And there's so many of our friends that we went to school with who have stayed in the Euclid area to raise their own families. So there was I was building up anticipation on social media, and we're sending out, text messages to family and friends, and really trying to work to identify those kiddos that we could put on the schedule around the time that we chose to open at the end of 2018.
When we build out a clinic, we usually take debt, but very often we'll roll in some of the winnings out of another clinic to pay off that debt faster. But when we started, we did, an average build out for us is 1.2 million. A lot of Americans look at that. They're like, how do you split that out? I'm like, half of it is on leaseholds, half of it's on equipment. They're like, you spend $600,000 on leaseholds. Calgary is an expensive place to build dental clinics. We're spending $200 a foot on leaseholds. I know in the US, you can usually get away with 120, 130, 140. So your build out cost can be less. Our equipment cost, we like to put the best equipment in. So we'll go with a cone beam. We'll go with digital x-rays. We'll go with an intraoral scanner. So we'll have an iTero in every office day one from opening, or, a prime scan, or a 3Shapes, whatever it is. But we want to make sure that we have the technology there. But the other part that you brought up, which is the part that usually drives most of the dentists nuts, is that we don't set budgets, we don't set targets, and we don't give out bonuses. We want our team lined up with our values, and our values are teamwork, respect, exceptional dentistry, and continuous improvement. TREC. And nowhere along one of our values is production. Nowhere along one of our values is profitability. And so we take that conversation out of the office, and you should see how our staff get behind just treating the patient well and not having to worry about, oh, did we produce enough today? Oh, did we collect enough today? Oh, did the doctor do enough work today? And when you're having those conversations, the focus changes. The focus changes to production. The focus changes to profitability. And it's a funny thing. When you change it to production and profitability, it actually decreases. And I know people are like, no way that that's correct. I will promise you it's correct. Change the focus to patient care. Change how are we going to make the experience the best experience ever? And all of a sudden, things just start to happen. Like, none of our staff get a bonus, and they work really hard because we don't have to say, well, if you worked harder, you'll make a little bit more money, right? Read the book by Daniel Pink, Drive. I love that book. And he says, if I could pay you 10% more and you'd work 10% harder, I should fire you. Because my expectation when I hired you was that you'd work at 100%. I should also pay you well for that 100%. So I need to pay you well. Don't underpay people and expect them to give you 100%. But you pay them well from day one, and then you do all the other things. You take care of them. You build out a community. You give back to the community. You figure out where they want to be and help them get to where they want to be. We spend a lot of time on team development. We're taking our whole team to camp for a day, like an overnight camp. And people are like, well, what are you going to do there? I'm like, I don't know. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have a couple of meetings. But, there's 2 hours of meetings and 6 hours of fun. That's what a day looks like to give back to your team. We're not really talking about dentistry. Yes, we're going to talk a little bit for sure, but it's going to be more motivational, more like, hey, how can we get together and do better things? And then let them do fun stuff.
If you asked me 6 months ago, I think an easy trigger for people is Google reviews, right? I don't really care where people come from, whether it's insurance, word of mouth, they're still probably Googling you. And that's usually the last thing they'll say is, hey, I heard you on Google. So it's probably not best to ask, where did you hear about us? It's almost, I think you might have mentioned on a podcast, it's better to ask, who do we have the pleasure of thanking, right? So they'll give you a more accurate answer. But I do think everybody Googles, right? We don't go anywhere without looking up reviews. So that's an easy source. If you can get constantly one review a day, that's 20 a month. That starts building over time. And as that kind of builds over time and you get 700, 800, 900 reviews like a lot of our offices have, then all of a sudden your cost of acquisition starts to drop exponentially. And believe it or not, patients have a perception of you in your office prior to entering. So your conversion rate goes up. So I think that'd be the easiest metric to, just see an increase and boost for revenue, new patient counts. Your bottom line is strictly just getting some Google reviews, honestly.
Wow, that is so good. I love the way that you tie that together, that it lowers your cost per acquisition on everything, right? So it doesn't matter if it's a patient referral, a doctor referral, a marketing lead. If somebody sees you out and about, they're going to go Google you. No matter what you do, they're going to Google you. But it also helps with their perception of you that, hey, this is a good place. And we've all been through that before, right? We go to a restaurant and it had 1,000 5-star reviews. We're going in thinking, okay, this is going to be good. And so that there's a little bit more trust built in there. So that's a great call out. I've never heard anybody fully express that all the way across the timeline. But let's go back to generating the Google reviews, because I heard you say, yeah, we just get a couple Google reviews and it adds up over time. What if a practice out there doesn't? Let's say somebody has 100 Google reviews, but everybody else in their market is like you. They have 1,000. How do you start building a culture or a system to get those Google reviews? Because I will say this, a lot of people think it's below their pay grade to get Google reviews, right? They think, man, I didn't go to dental school to ask for Google reviews, or I didn't learn to become a hygienist or even front end. They're like, it's not part of my job description. I don't really want to do it. So sometimes there's a pushback. So what have you done to overcome that?
Well, we talked about that three-year hiatus that we kind of took. We're talking about operational changes. We also had a lot of cultural changes that we did on the same point in time. So do we get rid of some, unfortunate apples in our teammates, not just saying doctors or hygienists or providers in general? There's assistants in the back that ask for reviews as well. We did kind of clean up things to make sure our culture was in alignment. And so when you start building a culture around, we call it the 1%ers in our organization. We want 1%ers, people that want to strive to be the best at everything. They want to keep score. Right? I hate to say it, they don't want participation trophies for just showing up. When you start building that kind of culture, then that's part of your culture. Getting Google reviews, our reputation is part of our culture at our office. So we use that as any other KPI metric that we would, whether it's production, collections, the normal ones that most offices are used to. We're looking at having Google reviews we get every day. That's actually part of our morning huddle. Like part of our morning huddle was having Google reviews we got yesterday. And that starts that idea behind it. Now, you may have to do some tactics, maybe incentivize your team, make it a game out of it. Anything that turns into a game is a lot more fun. Make it competitive between your offices. That helps out. Rewards help out, right? Do whatever you have to do that to get your culture thinking about Google reviews, and then tactically as operators, as we are, whether you're a CEO, CEO, or whatever position you have in your organization, set it up where they can win easier. And kind of what I mean by that is if it requires a friction point, like if I'm going to send Gary a Google review, say, hey, would you write me a good Google review? Gary's most likely going to say yes. They're not going to lie to my face, even if he doesn't want to at the time. If I rely on Gary going home and doing it, it's not that Gary doesn't want to do it. There's just things come up, right? He's driving home. I might have sent him the text during the time, right? Something like that may happen. So you got to find frictionless points to do it in the office. So what we found is, there's great organizations out there that'll send it, right? Well, your phone system will probably send it now for Google Links to write reviews. Swell's another one. I think there's several. Every company has one, it seems like at this point, right? Those are great, but I promise you, if you use that as an automation system, you may get 10 a month, 15 a month. People really like you. They're going to see it and write something at home. However, if you get somebody to write it while they're in the chair, you have a higher probability. So we kind of create our own system of how to ask in the office, how for our providers to ask, hand it off to the assistant, have them write it while they're in the chair while we're, hate to say it, we're buying some time, pretending to go look at their next visit and stuff like that. Sometimes we just get, hey, we don't say, write us a review, here's a free t-shirt. We'll say, we write us a review, and they'll go, yes. Be like, hey, as a thank you, we have a free t-shirt, right? You never want to say this is for that, but we say as a thank you, we have a free t-shirt. What size you wear? It buys us 5 minutes while they write the review. And what we started doing that really helped is everybody got really comfortable with QR codes. right, during COVID.
Yep.
So
COVID,
now everyone knows how to use them. So we made QR codes that go straight to our landing page. So at every operatory, we have a big old thing, QR code. We can easily guide any patient to go, do you have your phone on you? Yes. Could you scan that possibly? And once they say yes, and then it goes right to the page. You leave, let them write, right? Now, some will put it in their pocket and they'll go, I'll do it later. You can't, beat them up about that, right? But I do think that leads to possibly getting more reviews.
So let's talk a little bit about internal marketing. We in our business, we have so much just sitting in our schedules every day. Are you really looking at, so mom came in, dad hasn't been in 2 years. What's the communication tool that you're using to get him scheduled? What's the communication tool you're using? So for instance, I was in an office the other day and I was looking at the schedule. I said, look at this family here. They have 3 children. They're all over 15 now. Are they still going to a pediatric dentist or are they coming here? What's happening? So really, those are the things that you have to really dive in. And we call that a really extensive chart prep.
There's a couple of things you touched on there. So the first was, we call it the voice. So what is the voice that we're using? And that just means, do we have the same scripting all the way through? Are we all thinking the same way from a business standpoint? Is the front desk thinking the same way as the treatment coordinator and the doctor and the hygienist? So that's extremely important. So you got the voice. That's what builds the brand. That's what makes people feel like, man, these people really know me. They're really thinking about me, and that's great. Then you have the second thing that you said there was diving into that relationship, because every patient is a relationship and every patient knows multiple people. And I don't mean just like, hey, friends and family and coworkers, even their kids, even their spouses. And so that's huge. Now, before, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, D, before, offices didn't really worry about this because we had so many opportunities and so people had money and inflation hadn't hit. So people were happy to spend the money on the dentistry. But now that some of that's drying up a little bit, we really have to get back to this. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah. I always say, I believe in the wheel of success in a dental office, and it's changing. We were, like I said, we had so much. But if you're looking at now your wheel of success, you're looking at, okay, we go to appointment scheduling, right? Then we go to our phone call analysis. What are the questions you're asking? Are you asking, are there family members, right? Then we're going to go to, say, digital intake forms. When they send those forms back, right, you're looking at where they're employed. Do they have family? Are they married? All those things you have to look at. And then from there, you go into your treatment plans and your insurance eligibility and your AR. You're going all the way through that cycle. But everywhere on that cycle is a place where you can develop your internal marketing. You have to decide where you're going to develop it. And a lot of people, the assistant did it, or, we thought the doctor talked to them about it. But right now, on your wheel of success, you better be plugging in where that internal marketing is happening. So for me, I like it on the phone call. I like the first phone call. Do you have family members? Would you like to get them in? Well, just plant the seed, right?
Or like one that I heard recently, D, is sorry to cut you off, but I heard an office say they answered the phone. It was somebody who's been coming to their office, or maybe it was a new patient. Doesn't matter either way. And they're talking to this woman, and she goes, "Okay, I want to get it scheduled." And then they asked, "Is there anybody else you'd like to schedule in your family at the same time, so that way it's just more convenient, so you don't have to come back?" So now you're presenting it as a value add to the person on the phone, and they schedule several more people, and that's several more new patients. So.
Exactly. And have that scripting down, and especially in a pediatric office, for sure, in ortho right now. I mean, you really, we're telling them, you have siblings, bring them in. If we could get to see them, and there's always a way you could bring a sibling back. So just being really, you have to have the wheel of invention, kind of what I think now. You have your wheel of success and your wheel of invention. What does that look like? And on your wheel of invention right now has to be, what is going to be the most value for my team to get through the day and bring in those referrals? What does it look like? Because you have to look at your internal referral source. It's going to take you through this quarter.
Really, ultimately, we've seen a shift, and hygiene's our biggest shift that we've seen in our dental environment. And with the higher compensation that we're having to now overcome, the only solution many of us figured out is to put additional patients on the schedule, right? So we've gone from a 6 or 7, 8 patient day model to 10, 12, 14 patient model. I heard a model from another group that they're incentivizing their hygienists to above 10 patients a day to get an additional $10 or $15 per patient. Well, the challenge you have there is you're taking a model and you're shifting it to where you're creating revenue for sure, but you're not creating a relationship with the patient. Our typical hygienist sees about 6.2 to 6.4 patients a day, right? So we've kind of held true to the pre-COVID model, at least in our market here in Dallas. And what it's allowing us to do is we're giving the hygienist an enormous amount of quality amount of time to spend with the patient, right? With wellness scans, education, airway, head and neck exams, really making sure that when they leave our clinical team, they've had a full-blown experience, right? And I think we NPS score our sites. We Google, obviously, we reach like most groups do. But I think going back and allowing that time is what is happening. That's helped. Like all of our patients get wellness scans through the iTero. They really get a good education on their own. And then what happens is a consumer will then make a buying decision based on their feel, right? Most of us do purchases on emotional decisions. And as long as our teams understand that, then we can actually have these discussions that's what's well for the patient. We never drive revenue. What we drive is really clinical health, and it really drives the revenue itself.
Got it. Okay. So what's the and then inside of that, part of that is your patient referral program that you launched?
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're just really incentivizing our patients with referring back to us. So we're kind of giving what we call a gift referral, where they can come use some depot bucks with us and get, towards toothbrushes and whitening and some ancillary services, and really allowing, our patients and our other team members to become the real source of referral. As you know, Google's the animal in the room, or the elephant in the room, and we're all having to deal with their algorithm and how they track, and everybody's got the best answers to solve it, but everybody's all dealing with the same elephant in the room. And so we decided this last year, knowing that our spend for that is going to significantly increase, that the other way is to really go back and train our teams and having that experience and letting our patients know we're growing. Because even some of our established practices, patients don't really look to help send more patients. So we actually created campaigns that, hey, help us grow. We love you. And so we've created some internal things. We've just rolled that out in this last quarter. And we're starting to see an uptick in new patients, right?
For us, marketing was really referral management, relationship management more than anything else. As we entered an area, even in the beginning for us, there obviously needs to be brand awareness. So you need to be able to be known for something within the community that you're serving. So it's very, very important as a referral-based business to have a name and to have brand equity. And that was very, very important to us. But the bigger driver of our business is those dentists and those other medical professionals that trust us to treat their patients. So for us, it's all about, open, honest communication, transparency, the buzzword authenticity, being real, being available, and treating their patients kindly and well and predictably. And again, getting the patient back to the referring doctor's office in a way where they can comfortably treat the patient. Oral surgeons, by and large, can have a negative reputation as being, let's say, crass or a little bit conceited or difficult to deal with or whatever it is. And again, I was very aware of the way that we're seen. Optics are an important piece. Another word that wasn't used when I was starting out, but is constantly used today. And so it was very important for me to kind of change the way that oral maxillofacial surgeons were seen. And I think being more approachable, being more communicative, being more understanding, it took me years, but I spent a ton of time understanding the nuance of, let's say, implant restoration. And I spent a lot of time with prosthodontists and cosmetic dentists and restorative dentists trying to understand their art and what they need from us so that I could better perform the procedure that will help them perform their procedure. And I think part of having the groups of people, the groups of surgeons that I work with, I never look for a surgeon. Of course, we want a strong background and all of that, but their pedigree is less important to me. What's more important is who they are as human beings, their willingness to listen and to adapt and to understand what's being asked of them and to communicate with the dentist and communicate with the patients. And all that is paramount to a successful career, far more so than like, did you go here for school? Did you train here? I mean, that's all. I mean, it's important to be well trained, period. But it's more important to be able to relate to another human being.
You need to be thinking about yourself as, shelf space in a grocery store, right? You may have tons. Think about like energy bars. There are, give or take, between 10 and 20 of them in your nearby Whole Foods, right? Dentists are no different, right? And like, that's not to say that dentists are a commodity. Like, I absolutely adore my own, right? But the reason that I pick him is because he is a differentiated dentist in my book, right? It's the care, for sure. It's the care that I get. But he was the one who communicated a before and after and made me feel that the Maryland Bridge that he could insert plus do the cleanings and all the above, that was specific to me as a customer, right?
So if you would have said, hey, I got to refer you out for this stuff, you might have gone somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, I had to do my research. I had to call up a number of folks, get on the line. I had to do my, treatment plans and go through it. And, through that communication, getting me in store, it was, the way that he communicated, I thought was head and heels above other folks. But again, I think the way to really approach kind of your own practice is to think about yourself, just like putting it on a wall or, putting it on the store shelf and say, would I pick this practice? If there's 20 of them and they all look identical, how would I as a patient make the decision to pick my own practice? Right. And I think some of the things that you were leaning on before, like imagine creating a dental practice and the headline said, the only practice where you speak to no one to get into your seat. Right. And the whole thing was automated. And you'd be like, whoa, that's not what this industry is about. But let me tell you, you would stand out because no one is doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. You would stand out in a different way and it may or may not work. It may be awesome, may not, but that's a differentiator that would absolutely get reactions from people. Right. And when I say don't work, I know you want to qualify that. What I mean by don't work, maybe it attracts the wrong people. Maybe they're too young. Maybe they're not right. Like, so then you dial it in and you say, okay, we're a little bit early for this to be fully automated or all robots. But like we're starting to see this everywhere. Like McDonald's and these other places are starting to go with no man shops. Like someone's back in the back running something, but it's all machines pumping things out. So we're not far away from seeing something like that for sure. It's almost like you have two different teams that are working on you, like, and they're kind of working against each other. Like the hygienist is like, no, this all looks good. And you've been doing a good job. You've been flossing and you've been da-da-da-da-da and your gums look healthy. And then the doctor comes in and goes, you need da-da-da-da. And it's like, wait a second. Like
what just happened?
Yeah. It's very confusing from the patient's perspective.
And here's the thing, Gary, the reverse happens also, where the hygienist will tee up like periodontal therapy, for example, and say your gums are bleeding and we've been following this for, a year and it's not getting better. The doctor comes in and it's like, you're fine, you're great.
No fillings, no cavities, like, you're good.
Right. I just spent all this time like teeing this up. So the alignment is key. And so the first thing that we do is I teach doctors this leadership principle all the time. It's permission, knowledge, and accountability. So regardless how long you've been working with your hygienist, sit them down and say, hey, I've talked about, can you tee this up a little bit more for me? Can you talk to the patient about, what you think I'm going to recommend? You got to give your hygienist permission to start thinking like a dentist. And it's interesting because I'm trying to write this article for a large dental organization made up of dentists, and they didn't like that. But I'm like, I didn't say, like, do the work that only a licensed dentist can do. I said, start thinking like the dentist that you're supporting thinks. So give your hygienist permission, like, hey, I give you permission to start thinking like I think and to start sharing your observations with patients. All right. And I also tell them, like, let your hygienist know how far down that diagnostic path do you want them to take the patient. And some of them say, you know what, I just want them to take some pictures and establish that there are some issues here that I'm going to further diagnose, and then I'll recommend treatment. And some would like their hygienist to take the patient way further down that diagnostic path. And Inspired Hygiene, we help facilitate that learning. The second thing is the knowledge, right? Those dentists have to be willing to invest the time to really give their hygiene team, honestly, and their assistants too, this applies to the entire clinical team, to give them their treatment philosophy in real life situations. So, for example, one of the great things that we share is for doctors to take operative photos. Assistants are great at kind of reminding the doctor, give them a little nudge. Hey, this would be really great education for the team. Take a picture. They can just point, like, give them the intro camera, take a picture. When you take that old crusty amalgam out and there's a big crack down the bottom of that prep, no one ever sees that except the assistant and the doctor. But think about your treatment coordinator when they know what it looks like when these big amalgams come out, how much more like compelled they're going to be to recommend that treatment when they've seen that.
Just look at your historical data, right? If you have been in practice for any sort of amount of time, kind of the data tells a story, right? And you can see these year-over-year trends, like, okay, we go up, we go down. And typically, if you see a trend, okay, year over year from August to December, we see a 30% decrease in new patient traffic. You can kind of do the math and figure out which one makes the most sense. Obviously, adjusting the budgets is the most aggressive and it's the most, I would say, predictable, right? Because it's like, okay, we're going to get maybe a little bit less, but we're going to make up for it and just spending more. That one's more solid. But if it's like, hey, we only, are only 10, 15% down, I think you can get by with the reactivation campaign or something like that with the special. So it's just kind of looking at your market, your practice, your historical data, and let the data kind of decide where you go from there.
Awesome. Yeah. The one thing I know that everybody knows is it always slows down. That's what's for sure. So you're going to have existing patients that are going to no-show, and you're going to have new patients that are going to no-show, not even just from marketing, just from everything. So we know that for sure.
Yep.
When does that hit? Depends on your market. When does school kind of start? And when does weather, at the beginning of school or when school first gets out, it's like, when does the weather get nice? That's when people really start to get hit. And then when does school start is the end of the summer. That's really going to dictate that. So is it the end of August, beginning of September, that Labor Day weekend right in there? And then from there, figuring out, okay, well, how we know it's going to stink. How bad is it going to stink? Do I just need to get 10 or 20 more new patients in the month to offset that? Maybe it's just simpler to, like you said, move your marketing budget around, do something of that nature. Are you going to be off by tens of thousands or even more than that, $50,000, $60,000? Then you're going to have to get creative and do multiple different things, reactivate some people, run aggressive offers, and do a bunch of different things to offset that. So I love all of that. Jack, this is really, really good. Any parting thoughts or words on this before we part ways?
No, I think this is super important. I would say to kind of one thing we didn't talk about is making sure you're tracking everything properly, right? Mm-hmm. Historically, you're tracking your new patient numbers. You're tracking your return on investment for your marketing dollars. Because if you're able to, as a, if we're talking to marketing managers here, people responsible for the marketing of their practice, if you're looking at your numbers and, you're spending 2% of revenue and you're getting 3, 4, 5x the return, well, if you know that you're going into, even without having to do this, if you just want to get the approval to get more budget, if you can go there and confidently show to the CFO, whoever you need to show to get approval, or the owner doctor, you can go and show like, hey, we're spending X amount of dollars and getting 3, 4x each and every month. I'm confident that just in the month of September, to help make up for it, if we spend more dollars because we're tracking everything properly, we will get this. I think that's every CFO's dream, right? That you have that clear tracking and you're able to make those decisions backed by data.